Hello, I'm Tom Billington, the CEO of Billington Cybersecurity, and welcome to this Federal CyberByte. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Andy Stewart, the Senior Federal Strategist at Cisco, who will be interviewing our distinguished guest, Dr. Kelly Fletcher, the Principal Deputy DoD CIO. Thank you very much, Andy, for being with us. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy this brief interview. Andy?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks and welcome, Dr. Fletcher. It's great to be here with you. I'm excited for our talk. Why don't we just jump right into it? From your view, what are your top 3 priorities at OSD CIO?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I would say is we are working a lot of issues concurrently. We have a huge enterprise and we have a big team at CIO, at DISA, and at NSA. So I'm just going to tell you the 3 things that are top of mind today, which isn't to say that there aren't a lot of other things happening. So the first thing is cybersecurity. Within DoD, we're really focused on zero trust. And that applies to our networks, to our systems, but also to our weapon systems, truthfully. And then we're also very interested in DIB cybersecurity. So how can we bring up the cybersecurity of the DIB? The second thing I want to talk a little bit about is weapon systems. So there's a lot of technical debt. There are decades of technical debt in our weapon systems, and that pertains to cybersecurity, but it also pertains to other technical things like positioning, navigation, and timing, like tactical data links. This is a place where I believe we're at an inflection point. DoD was making some trades. We were in a really tough fight, but it wasn't a very technical fight. And as we look to the future, we know that our next adversary, they'll be able to take advantage of technical vulnerabilities that we know about. So we have to get after these. The last thing I want to mention is our role in enabling advanced analytics and AI. You may have heard DoD recently stood up the Chief Digital and AI Office. It's led by Dr. Craig Martell, coming to us from Lyft. We are really excited that he's here. And they're responsible for ensuring that we are a data-driven organization and that we're using that data in the smartest way. CIO is an enabler for this. So we have to make sure that data gets to the right place at the right time. We have to make sure that data is secure. And there's a lot to do in coordination with them to enable them to be successful.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear about all those 3. So we're going to dive into each of those. And having been a Spectrum guy, I love hearing about that, as well as the data side, being an ops research guy. But let's start with zero trust. Can you give us kind of a top-down view on how that's going in DoD right now with zero trust?
That's a great question. So we are really excited to have stood up the Portfolio Management Office at DoD, and they're doing the synchronization and the coordination. So in an enterprise with 5 million people, we are not going to have enterprise solutions for everything. We see the Portfolio Management Office as making sure that we're all moving down the field in the same direction. To be totally honest, we have some military departments that are way ahead in certain aspects of zero trust, and we want to learn from them, and then we want to deploy those solutions or enable others to deploy those solutions to them. The first thing we're focusing on with respect to zero trust is identity, credential, and access management, or we call it ICAM. And what we're doing with ICAM, so first, coming from DoD, we actually have a very robust ICAM environment now. We have identities across the enterprise. We have consistent credentialing across the enterprise. The place where we're building solutions is really in access management. And the way I always think of access management, this is maybe a little boring and bureaucratic, but it's, I should not be certifying my own time card. And that's true with multiple different applications. It actually gets very technical and tricky, and it affects cybersecurity. It affects finding insiders. So this is a critical capability, and we're using a federated approach on ICAM. So where we at DoD are focusing on is, what are we doing from an enterprise level where we deploy a single solution? What are we doing where we're encouraging folks to meet requirements, but deploying whatever solution they want? And then where are we just truly very federated?
Very interesting. I love the time card example. So I guess maybe to add a little bit more to that, you're bringing as much context into the identity and the access decision as possible in the environment, depending on what they have, whatever part of the enterprise they have already deployed.
Yeah, that's right? Exactly right. And like I would say, for example, on financial systems, so maybe you're in multiple financial systems, and so it's not even the same system. we have to control access for all of those systems. So it needs to be federated across systems.
Excellent. And I imagine too, with more remote workforce these days, how you're connecting and whether somebody's accessing say an application or a database remotely, how they're accessing it also matters. And that
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So there are some things that, frankly, it might not be appropriate to access, from your basement.
Sure, absolutely, or Starbucks.
Yeah, that's right.
We all endeavor. Let's dig into data and the discussion about data, because I think this is also pretty transformational in terms of what the department's doing with the Chief Digital AI Officer and how OSD CIO is moving and shifting to support more data democratization within the department, for lack of better words.
Yeah, so this is really exciting. I would say the stand-up of the CDAO, which is a direct report to the Deputy Secretary, I think that highlights the senior most interest at DoD in making DoD data-driven. This really, I think our leadership right now has identified this as a key priority. And the CDAO, I just want to highlight one of the key initiatives that they're working on right now. So they have a lot of things underway. The thing I want to highlight first is the ADA initiative, which is the AI and Data Acceleration Initiative. What this is like groups of very smart people get sort of airdropped on combatant commands and then go into that combatant command and say, where are you in your data journey? And truthfully, some combatant commands are like, okay, I know what I need. I've got it all in a common operating picture. I just need a little help with this last section. And then these super smart, airdrop people help them do that. In other cases, they go to combatant commands, and the challenge is that the combatant command isn't aware of what data is available from an enterprise perspective. Maybe they haven't even thought of ways that they could, use data to their advantage more so than they're doing today. And so these ADA teams are really providing very near-term results. The other thing that's really valuable and powerful about the ADA teams is that they're coming back and reporting back to CDAO, here are the challenges we saw. And some of those challenges are data related. This enterprise data was hard to get to, or the data isn't tagged appropriately. But some of those challenges are absolutely in the CIO lane. Right. The network was slow, or there was something confusing happening with the firewall, that kind of thing. And what I love about the stand-up of CDAO is CDAO then comes to CIO and says, I think this is an IT problem. Can you help? And so we're actually getting the opportunity to learn a lot about what it's like in the field.
Interesting. So that at that point, the CIO is kind of evolving to how do we make data a mission enabler, and now the network is really being a platform to
exactly
enable mission. Right. Any more on that? Is it being a data-driven platform for DoD operations? So
I can say from a CIO perspective, I really see us as, we're the highway, and it has to be big enough. It has to work. So I want data to get to the right place at the right time, and that's transport. And I think transport, for a long time, I thought transport was kind of boring. I thought okay, fiber in the ground, we're digging ditches, okay. But no, transport is not boring anymore. As we look at space-based transport, as we looked at, undersea, we are leveraging all kinds of really interesting capabilities to get data to the right place at the right time. And part of that hits on what you mentioned earlier, which is spectrum.
Right. So command and control of the network is pretty important, because the network really becomes that medium of maneuver for data, if I could paraphrase you. So how are we doing on visibility to do all those things to enforce zero trust? Is that where it all comes together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say that part of zero trust is ensuring that the folks who are our operators have the right information. Right now, I think that the right information exists, but it is buried in a lot of information. And so part of what we're doing is actually using AI to help our cyber operators, our cyber defenders be successful. And so that humans make decisions humans need to make. And then also we get some help identifying where are those decisions.
Right, and you're automating decisions at the speed of the network, where when you have a human on the loop or not necessarily in the loop.
Exactly right, yeah. Yeah, if we need to reroute something because something went down, I don't want to have to wait on a human for that.
Are there any other big priorities for CIO as an enabler to this AI ML sort of mission set?
So I would say transport is very much the first thing that we're looking at. But truthfully, some of it is cybersecurity related, and it dovetails with zero trust. I think historically, we've identified cybersecurity challenges, and we've larded more tools onto the network. And what that has done is that even if we have enough bandwidth, even if we have robust transport, things are going through multiple firewalls, things are sort of pinging around. It's delaying data from getting to the right place. The other thing I'll mention, just because I do think it is important, is as we look at spectrum in the future, spectrum is increasingly congested and contested, and we really need for our spectrum to be shared. We need to have spectrum available both here in CONUS to train, but then also, as we go abroad, we need to do dynamic spectrum sharing and be able to use different parts of the spectrum very dynamically.
Interesting. So in that context, if the network is the platform to deliver mission effects via data, now we're back to the weapon systems again. So we're thinking about one of your main top 3 focus areas. How is DevSecOps influencing some of that development in the weapons area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say DevSecOps, what I'm most excited about is providing folks platforms to be successful, right? So I want development to happen at the right classification level, and I want to make development easy. I want to make looping and security easy. So that's something that we're working on with our software strategy, which came out recently, and now we're working on the implementation plan. And that really gets after the DevSecOps strategy.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, ma'am. One final question or area, a lot of interest in the defense industrial base. So kind of tying into delivering weapons and capabilities. How are things from your view in efforts that OSD CIO is enabling the defense industrial base?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the defense industrial base is so important, and we really want to bring up the cybersecurity overall and enable that. One of the key initiatives is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Program. That gets a lot of press, and I can go into sort of eye-watering detail, which I will not do. But what we are doing is right now in contracts, it says, you need to follow NIST 800-171. And frankly, there's wildly divergent compliance with that. So we're getting after checking compliance. And some of that's through a third party, some of that is through the government. But the trick is, if you're a DIB partner, it's time to take a hard look at your cybersecurity and say, am I meeting the requirements today? We are also doing a lot of sharing. So I know folks love to hear from NSA, from DC3, from a number of entities, what is the threat? What should I worry about? So the NSA Cybersecurity Collaboration Center is getting after that, and they're also provisioning free tools. So I would encourage folks, if you're a DIB partner, look at that to get some, for example, like DNS.
Very good. And certainly from an industry perspective, it's sharing intel through that partnership too, which I think has also been super rewarding both ways.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right. It's interesting because when you talk about living the zero trust lifestyle, that's sort of what you're asking the DIB to do, is go from sort of this compliance mindset into actually living compliance as a day-to-day operational focus, which is, I think, where you're trying to take DoD. Exactly
right. Yeah. So we are really looking at moving away from, every 3 years we give you a hard look, but, you get a hard look continuously.
Very good. Very good. Ma'am, thank you so much for your time today. Amazing conversation. Wish you all the best in your work for DoD CIO and everything you've been doing. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.